Mhm.
Hi, and if you can hear me and see me, if you can give me a thumbs up or send a message, that'll be great. Okay, I can see you all now. There was some issue with the what do you say, with the settings. Apologies for that, but I can assure you that yeah, we found a way around this. First of all, my name is Dr. Ganesh Kuramanal, and I'm sure there are a few new students joining us today, and this is a unique um, gathering. The series of, we're going to have 11 sessions, including today's, and what we aim to achieve are two goals. One, this course will help uh, the students understand what IELTS test, IELTS, which stands for International English Language Testing System, stands for. We look at the curriculum, we look at the test structure, we will also go through each element of the test and giving the students a head start in preparing for the real test they would take. We also have uh, educators joining us today to be certified as, you know, iQuery certified IELTS trainers. Uh, a little bit of background about uh, where this comes from, the course comes from. Uh, I uh, I have been an IELTS examiner for about a decade in Australia, and I've examined thousands of students during the course of my exam tenure. And I've examined in perhaps about four or five different cities altogether. And before that, I have been a candidate of IELTS. And as early as in 2001, more than 23 years ago, like I took my first test. And in 2004, I took my second test, second time. And that's when I was able to score a band nine, in the test score. So scoring a band nine is mandatory for an examiner, for someone to become an IELTS examiner. And hence, that was my ticket to becoming an examiner. So this is a brief background. What it also means is that anyone can actually prepare and be able to score, really high band scores in IELTS. So this is where it will get started. Now, uh, what are we going to do today? We will look at what the test is in general, and we will also, look at the components. We will try to understand the various uh, types of IELTS test. We'll also look at um, the listening test. We will start looking at the listening test today. So that's pretty much for today. Uh, a couple of other things that will happen during the course of this, the entire duration of the course, the 11 sessions, is that first of all, you will receive resources. That is, test preparation resources, information, and you will get all those things. After this session, we'll be emailing you those details. Number two, you will also be given homework or task before you could come back to the next session. Number three, the best part is that everyone will have the opportunity to try a practice test. Yeah, you heard me right. you will have the opportunity to try a practice test before you come back for the next session, right? And that will be a good opportunity for you to see how it works, what it is, and you'll be doing it without much of a preparation, which is perfectly fine. And that is for benchmarking, right? Just to see where you stand now. And you will also get an opportunity to do the test, do a practice test again towards the end of the course. And therefore, you can figure it out. You can see the difference for yourself. That is the expectation. Your improvement depends hugely on the amount of work you will do and during the next 5 weeks or 5 to 6 weeks, the amount of uh, time you would spend in brushing up your language and maybe practicing language, in other words, uh, because the IELTS test preparation is aimed at understanding the test. It is preparing for the test and it's not preparing English. That's a big difference you will make out. So IELTS test is not an English improvement course, in other words. When you take the test, if you get a particular band score, and then if you feel that that's not sufficient for you, that is not what you want a better score, it is a clear indication that you need to spend time improving your language. In other words, this is a diagnostic test. Like in medical terms, you have diagnostic test to see what do you have and what you don't have, right? That's what it means. So it's a diagnostic test. It will give you an idea, a fair estimate of what levels of English proficiency you have in the four communication areas, namely listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And therefore, the tests are, there are four tests in the IELTS in the testing system. That's why it's called a testing system. The system has four individual tests, starting with listening, followed by reading. Writing is the third test, and speaking happens to be the fourth test. And I'm sure many of you probably already know these four tests, right? And the test components are different in the two major types of IELTS tests. There are many types of IELTS tests, but there are two in particular. One is IELTS academic, and the other one is IELTS general training. The difference with IELTS, the two tests is that the reading and writing tests are different in both versions, both types of tests. IELTS test is to be taken by people for specific purposes. General training, IELTS general training is to be taken by people for specific purposes. The test scores are used for various purposes, but the major reason why the test scores are used, or the major purpose, or the most important purpose, is to determine English proficiency of a student before they commence their education. English IELTS test scores are also used to, assess the capacity when it comes to skill assessments for migration. It is also used for visa purposes. So there could be multiple reasons why you should take an IELTS test. And based on the category of the reason, you would either choose to do an IELTS academic or IELTS general training. The listening test uh, generally is the same for both. The speaking test is the same for both. As I said, reading test would be different for uh, IELTS academic and general training, and so would be the writing test. The number of tasks are the same, but the task type differs. And we will look at those, individual components when we focus on the specific tests during the course. Uh, the basic strategies of this course, or the basic purpose of this course, is to help you understand the test, give you the experience of the test, and help you prepare for the test, and finally test. These are the four goals of this course. Now, to take the test, we will share the link to an online test uh, available. It's a free version, and you'll be required to take the test, over the next day or two before you come back for the next session. So uh, you'll have to just wait until we finish the session so that we can send you the links for this practice test. Now, uh, as I said, the two types of tests. There are many types, but the main types are IELTS academic. It is primarily for individuals who plan to study in an English-speaking country. Some non-English speaking countries also require you to take a test if English is not your first language. It assesses a wide range of language skills, including, of course, listening, reading, writing, and speaking, but the emphasis is on the use of academic language and tasks. So the assessment is done by asking you to complete academic tasks, right? So that is a key feature of IELTS academic test. The key feature of IELTS general training test is different because this is typically taken by individuals who are planning to migrate. So this is purely for migration purposes, not for skill assessment in certain areas. Even based on your based on your skill, based on your profession, based on the IELTS test for migration can differ. For example, if you are uh, if you fall under the category of the higher end skills like health skills, for example, nurses, doctors, lawyers, teachers, the IELTS test that you have to take is the academic test because your profession, your job involves more of an academic nature of English. Whereas you are into the vocational, segment, for example, trades, fitters, plumbers, painters, uh, what do you say, tilers, and all those, bricklayers, for example, just to give, or carpenters, those kind of skills, so mechanics, they don't need academic English. So for migration, they take general training, IELTS general training. This is the broad classification. So it also assesses listening, reading, writing, and speaking skills, but with the focus on everyday language and tasks. Because a person who wants to be a painter, like, they don't need academic language, obviously, but they need the day-to-day language to communicate with their clients and be in the community and all that. Making sure that language never becomes a barrier for them to settle into an English-speaking country. And that's the logic behind, that's the reason behind uh, testing a person before a visa can be granted. Right. Now, what we are going to look at today is the listening test. And what I would like you to do is to write down your questions as I'm presenting. Once I finish presenting, you'll be able to ask the questions through the chat box, and I'll be able to respond to your queries. So yeah, we will have, kind of uh, with this kind of an arrangement, that would be the kind of discussions we have. So you're more than welcome to ask questions at the end of the presentation. So please write down your questions and then ask them through the chat box, after the presentation is done. So you got an idea as to what broadly IELTS test is about, and what are the components, what are the major types of tests, that is academic as well as general training. And you also have a reasonable idea about who takes which test and for what reason. Right. Now let us look at the very first test. So when you register for IELTS, the first test that you will sit would be the listening test. By the way, listening, reading, writing, the three tests are done at a stretch. So if you look at it, listening takes about 40 minutes, reading and writing takes about an hour each. So altogether, it will take about 3 hours for you to complete the test. 3 hours is kind of a normal university exam. So your listening, reading, writing will be conducted one after the other in the same hall, sitting on the same chair, you know. in the same position. That is how listening, reading, writing are conducted. Uh, Speaking can happen either, normally speaking happens after your written test, right? But it is possible that you may have the opportunity to do the speaking test before you did your listening, reading, writing. It depends on the test center. The test administrator has the discretion. It also depends on the availability of examiners, because for speaking test, you will need an examiner to interview you in person. So sometimes when examiners are available a day before the real test, you may be asked to come for a speaking test the day before, the day after. But the ideal scenario would be you having the speaking test soon after your listening, reading, and writing. You get lunch break and you come back for your 15 minutes speaking interview. So that is an ideal scenario, but it's fairly flexible. And that is how the test is administered. Okay. So starting with the first test, it is listening. Listening test has a 30 minutes recording. So the recording, you have to listen to recording. The duration is 30 minutes, and there are 40 questions to be answered, and a variety of different question types are used. Question types are like, multiple choice questions or short answer questions, or one word answers, or one phrase answers. There are various types of questions that are asked in the listening test. uh, you will listen to four recorded texts. So, four conversations you will listen, recorded text. Two of them are monologues, and two of them are conversations. Monologues mean one person talking. It could be a talk, it could be a lecture, it could be a description, something where just one person speaks. The other two sections will be, so of the four sections, two will be monologues, one person talking, and the other two will be dialogue or conversation, right? And you will also be exposed to different accents. So it is neither British nor American. As you can see, you will find all the major English accents used in the listening test. Uh, British accent, Australian, New Zealand, and North American accents are used. So that covers US and Canada, similar accents, right? So you will be tested in terms of your understanding the accents as well. So that's part of listening test. The four parts of the listening test. Part one is normally a conversation between two people set in an everyday social context. For example, it could be, an accommodation agency, student counselor. It could be a library, for example, where two people speak, like, or the bank. Think about any situation where one person walks in and talks to somebody else. An office situation, normally, like, so it could be a conversation. It's a day-to-day social context. And always in listening, reading, and speaking, normally the difficulty levels are graded. So you start with the simpler part of the test, and as you progress into the test, the difficulty level changes, it increases. So the most difficult part will come towards the end of the test. So in listening, for example, the last monologue would be more difficult than the first one. First one will be part one will be very easy. Part four will be more difficult in listening. In reading, for example, the third reading passage would be more difficult than the first one, just to give an idea. So it will also help you to settle into the test as you get started. So be rest assured that when the difficult part, by the time that you reach the difficult part, you will be used to the testing system. You'll be more comfortable. So a lot of things have been considered while designing the layout of the test, or the sequence of the test, for that matter. The second part in listening is a monologue. Again, set in an everyday social context, like, speech about something. As a it could be a lecture, it could be a talk, it could be a speech, in an everyday social context. So not many technical terms used, normal conversations. It could be about the inauguration of a park, for example. just to give an idea, it could be anything. A monologue, a speaker, one person speaks. So first a conversation, second a monologue. Those are part one, part two. Part three is a conversation between up to four people, right? It could be like in a training context, a university class, or discussing an assignment, up to four people, certainly minimum two, up to four people. It's a group conversation, and a lot of people, each individual, each speaker contributing to the you know what to say, the discourse, and you have to listen to everybody and understand what they are discussing, and then you have to respond to the questions based on what the group is talking about. And then finally, the fourth one is part four is a monologue again, but this time it's an academic subject like a university lecture, right? So it is more academic in nature, but still it will not be difficult to understand because it will be very general. It will be a generic university lecture. It won't be a high end technical lecture. It'll be very generic, but generally a lecture that would happen at a university. Anyone with reasonable English and reasonable education should be able to understand. So, an educated candidate should be able to follow everything. It'll be less technical, in other words. So, you'll be able to understand the monologue quite well, depending on your level of proficiency, of course. And that is how your proficiency is tested with the listening test. Now, again, what we would do in our courses, we will also provide you with some of the tips as to what all things should you do when you are sitting the test. So the most important thing is that you have to make sure that your headphones are working or not, because if it's not working, once the test starts, it cannot be stopped. So that's the most important thing. Once the test starts playing, it cannot be stopped. So it will stop only when the whole recording, all the four parts are completed. So you cannot stop. You cannot ask them to stop. So you make sure that you can hear it. Uh, you will be given time to prepare questions. Now, it will clearly ask you, the test will ask you, now read section three. The questions in section three, whatever questions, they will also give you question numbers. Now read questions 11 to 15, right? When they ask you to read, please read it. And that's very, very important. You read it, and with each question, when you read, you can think about what kind of answer you're looking for, right? That's why they ask you to read. For example, are you looking for a name? Are you looking for a number? Are you looking for what kind of information are you looking for from the question? So it's very important to understand the question before you listen to the conversation so that you're prepared. You know what you're expected to listen to. That preparation is very, very important. Now, if you don't read the questions, there's a good chance that you will miss out. When they speak, you'll miss out. If you read the question, you will have very focused listening to whatever the speakers are going to talk, whether it's a monologue or a dialogue. And then when the recording starts, part one, this is a conversation. It will tell you what it is. It's a conversation between a nurse and a patient, yeah, or a teacher and a student, whatever. When they start, listen to it attentively and focus more on answers than understanding everything. Don't get carried away. That's the other difficulty you could get. So sometimes the conversation could be so engaging, but don't get carried away because your focus should be just on answers. And that's why you need to know that there are four answers you're going to find from this part of the conversation, or seven answers, or 10 answers, as the case may be. You know how many answers you're going to get from the conversation you're going to listen to. And also remember, the answers will emerge in the conversation, the same sequence of the question. That is, answer to the 11th question will come first in the conversation, and 12th will come after that. So you don't expect to have, if you're getting, for example, you have answered 10 questions and you're listening, and all of a sudden you get the answer for the 12th question, it means that it is very obvious that you missed the 11th question, right? So don't worry, don't panic. If you want to guess an answer, that's fine because there are no negative marks. But the answers emerge in the same sequence of the question. So that's an indicator. It's an indicator. If you miss an answer, that is, if you get the answer to the next question, obviously, you have somehow missed the answer to the previous question, the question that you are focusing on, and that's very important to remember. Um, and listen to the recording attentively and focus more on answers than understanding everything. Remember, the recording is played only once, so it will not be repeated, it will be played only once. You must listen to it, right? So don't panic. If you miss that question, don't panic. Go to the next one and pay more attention. That's all you would do. And that's a very, very important testing. Uh, you know, Another point to make is take notes on your question paper when listening to the recording. So while listening, you write the answers on the question paper. You don't write it in the answer. For listening, you write it on the question paper. And most important, also look at the instruction, right? So when they ask you to read questions, see whether it is a multiple choice question, whether it is a yes, no, not given question, whether it is a true or false question, whether it's a one word answer, short answer question. So write exactly what they want you to do. So if it says in no more than 3 words, your answer should be no more than 3 words. If you write anything more than that, you lose the marks. It's as simple as that. So read the instruction as to what kind of answers are expected. Um, and then uh, when you, what do you say, when you finish the recording, you get 10 minutes to transfer the answers. So from your question paper to transfer the answers to the answer sheet, you will get 10 minutes. And the good news for you is that we will be providing your pro forma answer sheet. You will know how exactly the answer sheet looks. You can take a printout, and when you do your listening test, practice test, you can actually, transfer the answer to that. Right. So we will provide you the sample answer sheet wherein you can write your answers. Right. And then finally, most important, and when you transfer it, make sure that you don't make spelling mistakes. You don't make grammatical errors. So subject verb agreement and all those kind of grammatical errors should be and could be avoided when you write the answer. So if you're writing a phrase in a sentence as an answer, make sure that when you read it through with your answer, it is grammatically befitting. There are no grammatical discrepancy there. So grammatical errors or spelling mistakes will lose marks. Obviously, like if there is a grammatical mistake or a spelling error, even if it's a typo, you will lose marks. So you have to be very careful when you write the answer in the answer book, answer sheet. Right. And then finally, you know, you could use all capital letters for your answers. If you feel that your handwriting is not good, you can use capital letters. That's absolutely fine. All caps you can use to write the answers for listening test. But if your answer, if your writing is fairly good, don't worry. Write it normally. Make sure the spelling is legible, the writing is legible, and the spelling is accurate. Right. So that's the speaking test. And let us come back to the discussion. Okay. I hope you have now some idea about, broadly, you have idea about um, what the IS test is about, and you have seen the listening test. This is just an introduction today. Moving forward, we will look at each test, each segment. And this is just, what do you say? This is an attempt to, what this session aims at, or was aimed at giving you an insight into what the test is like, and just to outline what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks. Um, we will, as I mentioned, we will go through each test area. And for the purpose of this training, we will focus on academic test, right? So we will not focus on general training because broadly, like if you are from health background, like, if you're nursing students or if you're, engineers or anybody, most of you would need academic uh, uh, version. So that's the other bit of information I have to share here. So um, now it's discussion time. Yeah, happy to please ask questions about what I have shared. Please also ask questions about, you know, something that you have to ask them if you got a question that is right. So please feel free to ask. Over to you. I look for, um, you know, yeah, I'll try to respond to your questions. So please type your answers in the chat box. Type your questions rather, sorry, so that I can answer you. Yes, uh, the trainees, IELTS train, because the trainers becoming IELTS trainers, please ask questions, and students, please ask questions. You're welcome, ma'am. Yes, you got to ask questions. Only then I'll get an opportunity to perhaps give you more insight. Can you tell me what kind of English do you listen to? Okay, if you don't have questions, I've got questions for you. Since we looked at listening test today, what kind of English do you listen to? Yeah, the marking schemes we will discuss, Rupali, when we look into listening test per se. Yeah, that we will be covering, in specific. Uh, the schemes will be covered, and you will actually get the rubrics for speaking and writing. We'll be sharing the rubrics for the speaking and writing in detail. Yeah, we'll be sharing those things. So my question is, normal spoken English, when you say normal spoken English, as to what context? Who speaks English in this case? Who is talking to you? Or whose spoken English do you listen to? Yeah, when you say normal English, can you specify what is normal English? What do you mean by normal English? No, Manori, like listening 4 sections is 30 minutes, recording, and 10 minutes to transfer the answers. Okay, food, American, right? Now, this is where preparation would help by listening to different accents. So, if you listen to people around you, they'll be speaking probably English with an accent of your region, generally, if you're talking about normal English, let's say at your school or wherever, it's quite possible that you will be using the language the way you normally use. For example, because I'm familiar with all the South Indian languages, I can give an example from Malayalam, for example. In Malayalam, people who speak Malayalam only, there are, some phonemes are missing in languages, that some phonemes that you have, phonemes or sounds in English would be missing in your language, or there may be some additional phonemes in your language that is not there in English. So, for example, but again, Monica, English spoken by Indians will differ from place to place. So, when you listen to Indians speak English, to a great extent, you can tell as to what part of India they are from, whether they are from Tamil Nadu, whether they are from Bengal, whether they are from Delhi or Punjab, for example. you know Generally they give away, the accent gives away the region they belong to, isn't it? Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, English has a set of sounds. So English, If you look at um, what do you say? If you look at um, sounds, both um, vowels and consonants. So if you look at it, vowels and consonants. So this is important for both listening and speaking. Uh, any language would have vowels, and you know what vowels are. It is not A, E, I, O, U. They are representing representative letters. They are the sounds like A's and E's and Oo's, A, E, U. And if you look at Indian languages, you start with E normally, right? That's what Hindi, most Indian languages use E, other than Urdu, right? So they are vowels. They are vowels. And uh, what, vowels are sounds that you can extend continuously. So if you want to know what vowels, when you say a vowel, when you articulate, when you speak a vowel, you can speak without a break. For example, you can try doing this. Try with me. Let's say ah. Take a deep breath and say ah, and then continue and count the seconds. You can keep saying ah as long as you got breath in your lungs. Until you run out of breath, you can stretch the sound. It is like an elastic, stretch the sound. They are vowel sounds, right? So what are consonants? Consonants are sounds that cannot be stretched. And if you want to stretch a consonant sound, you have to add a vowel to it. For example, after A, I, E, E, you have Ka, Kha, Ga, Ga, right? Ka, Cha, Ta, Ta, those kind of sounds, they are consonants. In Hindi, you call it swar and vyanjan, right? Swar is consonant vowels, and vyanjan is consonants. And if you look at vyanjan, Ka, Kha, Ga, Kha, Ka, for example, very common consonant. When you say Ka, Ka, you create the sound here somewhere in your throat deep, and then that's it. It stops. Ka. There's an explosion, stops. You cannot extend it. But if you want to say ka or ki, you add a vowel. Now, this is the simplest way to understand what the the differences between consonants and vowels. Now, in every language, there are consonants and vowels, and sometimes the consonants are different. Even the vowels are used differently, right? And I'll give you examples for both. When we look at consonants, I indicated about people who speak Malayalam. In Malayalam, there is no consonant, uh, no consonant like z, z. Like z, z is a consonant which is like in zoo. In English, there is zoo. In Urdu, there is za. In Hindi, there is ja and then a dot, right? That's za. So za, zarur, for example, that's za, zoom. When you say Zoom call, now, if you're a Malayali and if you've not learnt any other language, if you've not learned the sound, what they use is the closest sound they think. That's what they use. And in Malayalam, they use sa. Instead of za, they substitute za with a sa because Malayalam does not have a za sound. Right. So then a Malayali will go to a su. Right. Right. They will see a zebra, not a zebra or zebra. Right. So if a Malayali goes to Kenya or Tanzania, they will see a zebra. No, they'll see a zebra, not a zebra. But don't think Malayalam is, it's a really bad language. No, it is not, because Malayalam has a sound, has a sound that you don't have in other languages. Malayalam has other sounds that other Indian language does not have. For example, ra, ra, like in Mara, which is rain, or Param, which is fruit. Now, nobody can say this sound unless you learn Malayalam. Even in English, you cannot say ra, but Chinese have it. Chinese language, they got ra. Probably Malayalis got the sound from Chinese. We don't know because we got a lot of things from China. Who knows? Right. So ra. There is there's also a sound in Malayalam, you know, which is nya, nya. Now, when you ask a Tamilian to speak nya, they say nja, manja, right? Manja, whereas a Malayali will say manya, right? So what I'm trying to say is the sounds are there. And why this is important is because if you want to speak English, you need to learn the English sounds. So coming back to the question that Dr. Manjubala asked, what type of English needs to listen, what you should listen to. Look, what are you going to hear in the test? So tell me, when I explain to you the accents used in English listening, I mean IELTS listening test, what are the accents they use? If you can write it in the chat box, that'll be great. What accents are used in the listening test? If you remember, that was a few moments ago. In the listening test, what all accents are used? Anyone? Anyone? If you remember? In the listening test, you'll be exposed to UK, Europe. No, no, not European. Europeans don't speak English. Yeah. Yeah, Rupali, thank you. UK, New Zealand, Australia, and North American. That's right. So that covers all the five English speaking countries. Easy to remember. Canada, US, North America, UK, British accent, Australia, Australian accent, New Zealand, the Kiwi accent as we call. Now, you'll be interested, you'll find it amazing, amusing rather, not amazing, amusing that, the vowels also can differ from language to language, even country to country. And that's one of the major differences between American English and other North American and other types of English is the way we use the vowels or diphthongs. Now, diphthongs is a combination of two vowels. Diphthongs is a combination of two vowels because when you use two consonants, it's quite easy, like ch, like ch, sh, like uh, j, j, edge, like in edge, the j, two consonants are together, so they form different sounds. Whereas when you use two vowels together, like here, it's ear, ear, right? So two vowels, they're called diphthongs. But the way we use diphthongs in our English will kind of indicate what kind of accents you're speaking, right? Right. CANT, can't, right? If you're an American, you probably say you would sound more like can't. I can't, right? I can't. If it's British, maybe you can say I can't, right? And if you look at Australian accent, for example, it's like, I mean, easy to remember. It's more like the kangaroo hopping sometimes, you know. So that's what I can relate to. For example, day. You know, how do the Australian accents sound when you say day? day, right? The Australians would say die, to die, g'day, right? Die, right? So There's a very very old joke. Um, someone came to Australia for the first time, and when they went back, friends asked, "Hey, what did you find? What do you find really amazing about Australia?" I said, "Look, um, you know, in our country, in other parts of the world, bison. You know, bison. Yeah, exactly. You're right. They change a lot of vowels. They change. I mean, the accent differs when the vowels and diphthongs change generally, right? So, um, what the friend said, what this guy said is like, yeah, the what I discovered, what was really amazing is that uh, for the rest of the world, you know, bison is an animal. Bison, like a buffalo type of animal, bison, right? And whereas in Australia, that's where you wash your hands, right? So you can call it basin. Depends on what kind of accent you use when you speak. So if you start paying attention to these things, you will know, uh, how people speak the same word differently, and you have to create that awareness if you really want to understand spoken English. When others speak, and look, English is spoken by people from every country. When the French speaks English, they speak with French accent. When the Kenyans speak English, and have you heard people from Africa speak English? If you know African languages, you can tell whether they are from Kenya, East Africa, or Ghana from Northwest. The Moroccans speak English more with an Arabic accent. Have you heard the Arabs speaking English? They speak with a very different accent. How about the Chinese? They speak with very different accent. So do Indians and Sri Lankans, right? So those accents are, I mean, it's an accepted thing that people speak English with different accents. And but in the test, you don't get to hear Indian accent. You won't get to hear South African accent, for example, because they're not considered to be standard English. The standard English they consider is the English that is meant to be spoken in the English speaking country. But that is changing. That is changing too. Thanks to technology and all, language is changing. Language has always changed. But coming back to the test, if you really want to prepare, yourself for the listening test, you must expose yourself to types of English. Now, the Kiwis, the New Zealanders, they have a different accent. Right? They don't say like net, net, right? Instead of they use e. So instead of net, it becomes neat. So what do you say? Uh, yeah, you can try any word and change to e. You will sound like the New Zealanders, the Kiwi speaking English, right? So they will speak English in a clipped manner. I mean, that is what it sounds like, because for a they use e, for example. That's a major thing that you can spot really quickly. So it's really funny when you have an American talking to an Australian. They may not understand each other's. Right? You may think that they both speak English, but no, the accents can be so different and can become really really difficult to understand. Right? So Um, it's very important if you want to improve your listening skills, then you should be listening to different types of English. So, in other words, listen to Trump, Donald Trump, listen to the British Prime Minister, listen to the Canadian, right? Yeah, right. You can find a lot of examples. Yes, Sonia, you're right. Right. So, and accent part. We're not looking into in Ielts. We don't look at the different terms used. For example, there are Australian expressions, there are American expressions. Although they are English words, but they mean something very different. Cultural understanding, cultural pragmatics is not tested, which is good for you because you don't have to worry about what does that really mean. For example, in Australia, Sheila means a woman. Sheila is the name of a woman, right? In India. And in many parts of the world, Sheila is a very common name, I suppose. But Sheila in Australia is a woman. So any woman saw, that's a Sheila there, so Sheila means woman. So those things are not tested, thankfully, right? But yes, the accent becomes a challenge for you if you are not familiarized. If you're not familiar with the accents, you may end up not understanding the listening test. You may know the language. See, that's a difficulty. You may know the word, you may know the meaning, but the accent can actually become a barrier in understanding what they say. And in real terms, that's what happens. What will happen if you are passing through Heathrow Airport and you listen to the British accent, not the BBC accent? BBC is a standard English, but if you look at the Scottish or Welsh accent, for example, the UK or Irish accent for that matter, it can be very strenuous for you, for your ears. But when your proficiency increases, you would end up understanding pretty much everyone to a great. But still, sometimes you have to strain. And if you watch English movies, depending on the actors and their nationalities, the accent will differ, isn't it? So next time when you listen to English or watch English movies, remember all these things that we discussed today about accents. And listening test has one barrier that you need to overcome, that is the accent people speak. You don't have to speak those accents, but you certainly need to try to understand them. You should be able to differentiate them. Only then, it's like a lens. So you must understand the lens and say, oh, yeah, this is what they mean. If they are Australian or Australians, or Australians, right? Australians, Australians jump, that's very typical Aussie. And Australians also don't speak very long words. We cut short. The maximum we can speak is two syllables, two parts of words, that's all. So university becomes uni for us, right? Service station becomes servo. So in a speaking thing, if there's a servo, yeah, that means service station, right? And yeah, you can pretty much cut down anything to two syllables and say that is, um, you know, um, what do you say? Yeah, that's right. So idioms and phrases are different, but again, that is not tested in the listening test. It's more, the major challenge you will face is not idioms and phrases, or as I said, cultural pragmatics is not a major assessment because you can't. It's very difficult to know all the cultural pragmatics of the five different countries. But the accent is something that is evident, that comes upfront, that is a real barrier, it's a real challenge. So if you are aware of it, I'm sure you'll be able to, what do you say, address that. So what do we do? How do we deal with it? One, listen to English, types of English, and as some of you indicated that normal English is good for normal situation. If you want to take a test, you really need to listen to all the types of English that the test is going to present you with. So you should be listening to American English. You should be listening to Canadian English. You should be listening to British English. You should be listening to Australian and New Zealand English or Kiwi English. So you should be able to listen to them as much as possible. That's one thing. And the more you listen, the better. And when I say listen, it is not watching. That's another point I want to make here. So watching movies will not be as good as listening to something. So the best thing you could do is podcast, radios. They are the best thing because when you're just listening, you're focused on that. But when you're watching what happens, you can deduce a lot of meaning by what they show, right? So much before somebody comes and hits, the person is going to come and hit because you can see that. Whereas if you're just listening, you can't see it. You have to depend entirely on what they speak. You just hear, oh my goodness, the person will say, oh my goodness, you're killing me, and you can't see it. But in a movie, you can see it. Therefore, the language is less used in movies. The visuals communicate a lot of things. So listening to different accents, but just listening is very important. Watching movies cannot be an excuse. I mean, yeah, of course, watching movies can help you, but that will have limited impact on your listening skill because your listening test is only listening test. They don't ask you to watch a movie, right? So that's another, tip to take home. Make sure that you get used to listening to. And the best thing would be when you drive, listening to the radio, or when you are at home, like podcast. You got Spotify and a lot of there are a lot of. I'm sure plenty of apps. You can also listen to audiobooks. Yeah, right. So if you want to improve your listening skills, listen to audiobooks. But again, when you listen to the way people speak. So when you listen to the same text, same language, each time you listen to, you can look at different features. Right. Uh, UK is good with English grammar, but look, the spoken grammar is different from written grammar. That's something that is for another day. That is not part of, an IELTS test preparation. So that is something I'll be able to talk about, when we look at the, what to say, the what is it, the semantics and pragmatics, you know, of a language. So that we'll have to literally get deeper into linguistics then. So that's for another day. But yes, uh, every language, every type of English has good grammar. The language spoken in the speaking test, in the listening test, would have very good grammar. You won't find grammatical errors. Even if a non-native speaker speaks in that, it's quite possible that it could be an international student speaking in the conversation. Still they will have fairly good grammar, right? So you don't have to worry about grammar in the listening test, but you have to worry about the grammar you use in response, like subject verb agreement, right? For example, the question is okay. For example, Sonia, um, you know, uh, Sonia, would you say uh, did, or when you ask a question? So, sorry, giving an example of subject verb agreement, if you say Sonia, uh, she, uh, Sonia, whatever, Sonia did something, and then she goes home, right? Or she does. Is it she does or she do, right? They do or they does. That's for example, the subject and the verb should agree. So, plural subject should have plural verb. And the paradox in English is that plurals in English is normally ends with S. For example, apple, apples, right? Girl, girls, boy, boys. That's a standard plural. There are, of course, other different forms. There are words that may take a different shape or different form altogether in plural. But and there are also words without any plurals. For example, sheep, sheep. There are no plurals, for example. But when you have like girls, girls, the verb could be do or does. Do is normally singular if it were a noun. But when it becomes a verb, do is plural and does is singular. So you can't, when you say he do, she do, no, he does, she does, right? So subject verb agreement. So uh, brushing up your grammar is important for all the tests, in other words, because when you write the answer, you should not make grammatical mistakes. You also should not make spelling mistakes. It's very, very important. So grammar and spelling are important, but you could do any grammar and spelling practice for this, and that will help you in all the four tests: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So that goes without saying, doing grammar. So I think the listening test, um, you know, that kind of gives you an idea about what listening test could be. And we will meet very soon, or the next time at the same time. And I'm sure, like we will have a better arrangement for the next session. So we'll not have the kind of confusion that we had at the beginning today. But that's fine. We are here. I hope the introduction has opened up a lot of things for you. There are tons of resources available online. but I would not use all of them because some resources may not be aligned with the real test module. And the IELTS test preparation is only to understand the test. And this course is more than sufficient to do that. But the question is, what if we have a lower than expected skills? And that is where, as I said, this is a diagnostic test. This will measure. It is like measuring your height or measuring your weight. It's a measure. It's a measuring. This test will measure your English. Now, if the measure comes only to band six, it is not because you're not prepared for the test. It's because you need to improve your English, right? And that's why it's a diagnostic test, right? So, um, yeah, this session will be available on YouTube. We will share the link with you. The slides will be shared as well for all the trainees. We will share, the slides. But for the students, what we will do is we will give you the resources, the test resources, and trainees will get all the test resources as well. So if you are undergoing training, you will get everything, including the slides. But if you're a student, in this group, you will get, the task, for example, the links to the test, the materials, whatever. So we will give you resources, but please feel free to look up on the internet if you have time. But more than that, what would be the best thing to do is to start listening to English. If you're planning to take a test seriously, start listening to English. Listen to British accent, listen to American accent, listen to Australian and New Zealand accent. That would be a good way to get started with improving your English. Now, uh, now, what do you say? When it comes to speaking, the same problems can come. So when we deal with the speaking test, you will know how you can end up scoring less if you do not focus on your accent, right? And yeah, we'll be taking you through the rubrics, explaining that what is expected and all, and speaking rubrics. And as I said, we'll be sharing the guidelines for the assessment. For listening and reading, the guidelines are very simple. Just follow the test, the question paper. That is all. There is no other guideline. Whereas for reading and speaking, there are very specific guidelines about how you perform your reading and writing tasks, right? So yeah, we will go through them in depth during the course. So that's all from me. It'll be good to get your feedback, and we will arrange a form for you to provide feedback. So when we request the feedback, please provide the feedback because it will help us improve what we do, improve the delivery, and yes, and for all the students who are attending this session today, good luck because you've started well. You're on a good start. And by the time you come back for the next session, you would have completed the test, all of you, both trainers as well as students. And yeah, we'll be discussing your scores. Right. That's about listening and reading. The others, again, you will get a chance to write a test. You'll also get a chance to do a speaking interview. That's that's part of the package. Right. So until we meet, good luck, and we will continue to communicate with you through the same channel. Thank you very much. Good night.